Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasul al-Kareem. Wa ba'd. Alhamdulillah, when we last left off, we had reached Surah Al-Qadr, the 97th Surah. So today, inshallah, the Imam is going to be bringing us through the 98th Surah Al-Bayyinah and onward from there. The Imam starts by saying, quote, Surah Al-Bayyinah is also known as Surah Lam Yakun. It has been mentioned that it is in totality a surah of Al-Madinah. This has been mentioned by the vast majority of scholars. However, a second body has concluded that it is of Al-Madinah but has Meccan elements. This was mentioned by Ibn Abbas and the chosen position of Yahya ibn Salam. Allah the Exalted, He says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. لم يكن الذين كفروا من أهل الكتاب والمشركين منفكين حتى تأتيهم البينة رسول من الله يتلو صحفا مطهرة فيها كتب قيمة وما تفرق الذين أوتوا الكتاب إلا من بعد ما جاءتهم البينة وما أمروا إلا ليعبدوا الله مخلصين له الدين حنفاء ويقيموا الصلاة ويؤتوا الزكاة وذلك دين القيمة إن الذين كفروا من أهل الكتاب والمشركين في نار جهنم خالدين فيها أولئك هم شر البرية إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات أولئك هم خير البرية جزاؤهم عند ربهم جنات عدن تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه ذلك لمن خشي ربه الله أكبر. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate, those who rejected faith from the people of the book and the idol worshippers did not go astray until there came to them the clear evidence and proof. A messenger from Allah reciting to them pure pages. Within them, books that were straight and upright. And those who were given the book did not dispute except after there came to them the clear evidence. They were not commanded of anything except that they worship Allah sincerely, having the religion be purely for Him and be faithful, and establish the prayer and give the zakah. And that is the upright religion. Indeed, those that reject faith from the people of the book and the idol worshippers are in the great fire for all eternity. They are the worst of creation. Those who believe and do righteous deeds, they are the best of creation. Their reward in the sight of their Lord is gardens of Aden, under which rivers flow for all eternity. Allah is pleased with them and they are pleased with him. And that is for the one who indeed fears his Lord. Surah Al-Bayyinah, the 98th Surah, ayat 1 to 8. Now, when the Exalted One has said that those who reject faith did not go astray from those from the people of the book, this refers to the Jews and the Christians, while the idol worshippers are those who worship idols. And they did not break into groups and go astray. This did not happen to them on account of their kufr and shirk until there came to them the clear proof and clear evidence. Now, although this is being used in the future tense, its meaning is past tense. And the bayyinah, the clear evidence or proof, is the messenger, and he is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He made clear to them their astrayness, their ignorance. And this is the explanation regarding the favor of Allah upon those who believe from these two groups when they were granted salvation. Now, some of the scholars of commentary went to the understanding that the ayah refers to the fact that they did not differ, that Allah sent among them a prophet until he came, and then they differed about him. So some of them said that they will not go astray because they don't need a prophet, while others went astray because the proof came to them and they denied it. But the messenger here, as we said, is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the meaning of reciting to them pages, meaning pages of that which was written down, of the proof, that which was recorded of the Quran. And this is an indication as well that the Quran was recited by heart and not always written down in a book form, but people memorized it initially first. Purified, meaning purified from major shirk and falsehood. And in these pages are books that are upright and noble, making the truth clear from falsehood. Muqatil has said, so it said books because, not because it's composed of many books, but rather because the subjects are many. And when you have many subjects, you sometimes call these books. And those who were given the book did not differ and break up into groups. This is referring to those that did not believe among them, except after the clear proof came to them. So, the clear proof coming to them is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They were always established upon Iman until he was sent, as mentioned by the vast majority. The Quran also caused divisions, said by Abu-Aliyah. And what was in their books that explained his prophethood is said by Al-Mawardi and Az-Zajjaj. So their kufr and other things, they did not do this except after it was made clear that the one who was promised in their books was indeed this prophet that they were rejecting. They were not commanded in their books except to worship Allah, meaning that they worship Allah alone, and that they are to seek the truth. So the expression إِلَّا أَن يَعْبُدُ اللَّهِ or إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُ اللَّهِ, except that they should. Similarly, Allah has said this, يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُبَيِّنَ لَكُمْ, Allah so desired to make it clear to you, so that it might be clear. Surah An-Nisa, the 4th Surah, 26. يُرِيدُونَ لَيُطْفِئُوا نُورَ اللَّهِ, they seek that they might put out the light of Allah. Surah As-Saff, the 64th Surah, ayah 8. And also, وَأُمِرْنَا لِنُسْلِمْ, we were commanded that we might submit. Surah Al-An'am, the 6th Surah, ayah 71. The lam here, li, refers to the fact that so that you might heed this command, so that you might do it, So it's agreeing with the command form. They are sincere in their religion, meaning they declare Allah one and unique. They do not worship those besides Him. Hunafa, which is the plural of Hanif, which means they are upon the religion of Nabiyyuna Ibrahim alayhi salam. They establish the prayer that is compulsory at its proper times. They give the zakah when it becomes compulsory. And that which they've been commanded to do is the upright deen. The deen of the ummah that is straight in truth. That is the deen of the upright way. And when Allah says that they are the best of people, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمْ خَيْرُ الْبَرِيَّةِ, it means they are the best of creation. Nafi' ibn Dhakwan from Ibn Amir recited as Bari أُولَٰئِكَ هُمْ خَيْرُ الْبَرِيَّةِ, while the rest of them recited as خَيْرُ الْبَرِيَّةِ. And Bariyya means the creation. Now, most of the people recite it as Bari'a, while others recite it as Bariyya. Now, some say that the expression Bariyya comes from the root Baraitu, I spread the stick, because it means that the creation is being spread. Some say that the expression Bari comes from Bara, which is the dust, because it's referring to those that have been created from dust. As the Zajjaj said, if it was from the root Al-Bara, which was dust, then it would have been written with a Hamza. Man bara Allahu al-Khalq, the one who Allah brought from dust of the creation. But Al-Khattabi has said the root of the word Bariyya is with a Hamza, except that the Hamza is left when the word is joined with the feminine ending. The rest of the ayah from Khayrul Bariyya is manifest to anyone who reads it, up to the portion Allah is pleased with them. Muqatil says that it means Allah is pleased with them because of their obedience, and they are pleased with Him because of His reward. And some of the early generations used to say that if you are not pleased with Allah, then how can you ask Him to be pleased with you? So you must be pleased with Allah. And that is for the one who feared his Lord, meaning he feared Him in this earthly life and he strove with might and main to avoid disobeying Him. We then come to Surah Al-Zilzalah. Surah Al-Zalzalah, it's been mentioned that this is a surah from Al-Madinah, which is the position of the vast majority, including Ibn Abbas, Qatada ibn Da'imah, and Muqatil. While a smaller body has said that it is Meccan, such as Ibn Mas'ud, Jabir, and Ata. Allah the Exalted has said, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. إذا زلزلت الأرض زلزالها وأخرجت الأرض أثقالها وقال الإنسان ما لها يومئذ تحدث أخبارها بأن ربك أوحى لها يومئذ يصدر الناس أشتاتا ليروا أعمالهم فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يره ومن يعمل مثقال ذرة شرا يره. Allahu Akbar. In the name of Allah, the merciful, the compassionate. When the earth is shaken with a mighty quaking, and the earth throws off her burdens, the human being will say, what is wrong with her? On that day, she will speak of that which she is informed of, and how her Lord has revealed to her to speak. That day, that which men had concealed shall be spread out, so that they shall see their deeds. Whoever does an atom's weight of good shall see it. Whoever does an atom's weight of evil shall see it. Surah Al-Zalzalah, the 99th Surah, ayat 1 to 8. When the Exalted One mentions when the earth is shaken with a mighty quaking, meaning a severe movement. Now this is at the time that the hour is established. Muqatil said, the expression tatazalzala, this is coming about due to the severity of the horn being blown by Al-Malik Israfil alayhi salam, until all of what is upon the earth falls into disrepair and ruin. Nothing remains firmly fixed upon the earth at this time, whether it be a mountain, a building, a tree. Then it shall shake in a mighty fashion yet again. Everything shall be disturbed, and all of what is inside of the earth shall be spewed out. Now, when people ask, what is this Zalzalah being referred to? What is the time this Zalzalah shall happen? There are two statements on this matter. The first is that this Zalzalah shall happen in this earthly life. And it is, this cataclysmic earthquake is from the signs of the hour. And this is the position of the great preponderance of scholars. Close quote. Just a quick point. I make a distinction often in English between saying the vast majority and the great preponderance. Vast majority in Arabic is jamhur, which means the great majority. The vast preponderance in Arabic is either going to be al-aktharun or al-jamahir. Jamahir and aktharun means that it's of such a large body of people that hold that position that there is a negligible group that says otherwise. That's the difference between the great preponderance and majority. Majority means, jamhur in Arabic, there's a large body of people who say this, and there is a sizable minority that holds a different position. But great preponderance means that it's such a large majority that it's a negligible amount that are opposing it. Now the Imam, he says, quote, the second position outside of the great preponderance is that it is the earthquake occurring on the day of resurrection. This was said by Kharija ibn Zayd in one of his two statements. Al-Farra has said, it was narrated to be by Muhammad ibn Marwan, who said, I asked Al-Kalbi, what do you say of the statement of Allah when the earth is shaken with a mighty earthquake? He said, this goes with the statement, وَيُخْرِجُكُمْ إِخْرَاجًا, and when you are expelled out with a mighty expulsion. Surah Nuh, the 71st Surah, ayah 18. So this goes back to its original source. So it is as if you are saying, when you are given something in great abundance, when something happens with severity, and when the earth throws off her burdens, meaning what's in it of the deceased and the dead, as said by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, so whatever is inside of the earth shall be vomited out. The second statement is all of its treasures that it bears within it, as said by Atiyah, as well as Al-Farra, who says that it means both. The treasures within it of gold and silver, as well as the deceased. And when the human being says, what's wrong with it? This refers to the unbeliever and the believer. They'll both be saying this because it's from one of the signs of the hour, so they're thrown off. Because at the time that the severe earthquake will happen, it will catch people off guard. So they'll be asking one another until they become certain that, oh, this is the earthquake of the sign of the hour. However, the second position is that it's specifically unbelievers that will be saying this. And this, the reason why the second group says it's the unbelievers is because they also hold the position that this will be the earthquake occurring on the day of resurrection, which will not be the sign of the hour, but occurring on that day. Because the believer will know what is going on. He won't ask about it. But the unbeliever who had denied it, because he doesn't believe in the revelation, as well as the resurrection day, then he will certainly be asking about it. On that day, she will inform, she will give her news. Meaning when the earthquake and these other things happened on that very day, she will give the news of what has occurred, what was done upon the surface of her. Now this can be put with the hadith of Abu Hurairah from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he said, do you know what the earth's news is that she shall give? And the people said, Allah and His Messenger know best. He said, her news is that she, the earth, shall bear witness against every slave, male and female, and all the deeds they perpetrated on the face of the earth, saying, such and such was done on this day. Such and such did this and that upon my surface. And this is because your Lord shall reveal to her to do this, meaning she will be able to inform about what happened by the revelation of Allah and His permission being granted. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said, so He, Allah, shall reveal to her and give permission to the earth to speak. Tell them what has happened to you and what they did on your face, how it was done. On that day, mankind, the secrets that they have when they come to the place of reckoning shall be spread out. So the people of Iman shall be in one area, and the people of Kufr shall be in one area, and their deeds will be capable of being seen. So the reward of their deeds, when they come to the place of reckoning, they will be able to see their deeds. Those who go up onto the paradise and the fire, their deeds shall be exposed. On that day, all the deeds will be scattered, and the most uttermost secrets of man's heart shall be brought to bear. They will see what they did of good and evil at the time. And whoever did an atom's weight, scholars of commentary say, in this earthly life, whoever did an atom's weight of good or evil shall see it. The same thing was mentioned in Surah An-Nisa, the 4th Surah 40. He shall see it in his book, or he shall see the outcome of it. Its reward is said by Muqatil. Now, Muqatil also said that this was sent down regarding two men who were in Al-Madinah. One of them gave what he had, whether it was dates or the like, while the other fell into sins. So Allah sent this ayah down to show that whether it was a little of good or a little bit of evil, it shall be seen. And the one that did a little bit of good is encouraged. Whoever did an atom's weight of good shall see it, meaning you should continue doing it. And whoever did an atom's weight of evil, the one doing evil should take heed of that and avoid it, so that they do not fall headlong into the evil. Surah Al-Adiyat. There are two statements regarding this. The first is that it is a Meccan surah. This is the statement of Ibn Mas'ud, Ata, Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, and Jabir ibn Abdullah. However, the second position is that it is a surah of Al-Madinah, as said by Ibn Abbas, Qatadah, and Muqatil. So the Exalted, when he says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Wal-Adiyati Dabaha, Fal-Mudiyati Qadaha, Fal-Mughirati Subaha, فأثرن به نقعا فوسطن به جمعا إن الإنسان لربه لكنود وإنه على ذلك لشهيد وإنه لحب الخير لشديد أفلا يعلم إذا بعثر ما في القبور وحصل ما في الصدور إن ربهم بهم يومئذ لخبير. Allahu Akbar. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate, by the steeds that beat their hooves, and by the sparks that come up as they march along, and by the embers of the morning light, and the traces that are left, the gatherings that are brought forth in their company. Indeed, the human being is most ungrateful to his Lord, and he is a witness of that. And he, in his love of the good things, is most strenuous indeed. Does he not know when he shall be when what is in the grave shall be overturned, and what is in the hearts shall be cast out? Indeed, their Lord on that day is all informed of that which is with them and that which they did. Surah Al-Adiyat, the 100th surah, ayat 1 to 11. When the Exalted One refers to the steeds galloping along, this firstly refers to the camels on the way to Hajj, as is said by Ali ibn Mas'ud, Ubayd ibn Umayr, Al-Qurdi, Al-Sudai, and others. Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anh said that this refers to the camels making their way from Arafah to Al-Muzdalifah, and from Al-Muzdalifah to Mina. But Ali radiallahu anhu also said that this refers to the swiftness in which these things shall happen, and also the swiftness of the incident at Badr. Because he said, there was nothing with us on that day except a horse. And in some of the hadith, that they said they may have only had 2 horses. The second is that it refers also to the steeds used in the cause of Allah in war. This was mentioned by Ibn Abbas, Al-Hasan al-Basri, Ata, Mujahid, Abu al-Aliya, Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, Qatada ibn Da'ima, Atiyya, Al-Rabi', as well as the grammarians. And this is the position of the vast majority. Now, it is mentioned from a statement from Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, from Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he sent out a horse and he did not get news of it for a month. And then Allah sent down the beginning of this surah regarding its moving out, the swiftness of its flight, and the beating of the hooves against the rocks, like embers flowing up. And the morning that came to the people of the news of these steeds approaching. And as the dust was kicked up by these steeds with the embers as they beat the ground. And as the morning came, the people were gathered together. They witnessed the sign of this. Muqatil mentioned that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent out a party of horsemen to two tribal areas from the Kinana. And those over them were Al-Munzir ibn Amr al-Ansari. And he said to get news from of their whereabouts and what they were doing. The Jews and the hypocrites, when they saw a man from the companions of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they spoke among themselves. And the man thought that maybe his brother had been killed, or his father, or his paternal uncle. So he found some mourning from that and was concerned about what might happen to him. And Allah sent down this surah, and Allah informed how this was done to them, the steeds of war, and how the marching of the hooves of the horses going forward against their enemies, how this would play out in the future. Because the dabh in Arabic, wal-Adiyat dabha, the steeds of the horses going forward, the whinnying coming from their throats as they march forward, refers to a sign that shall be coming, where horses and camels march out in large number. So the horses, it shall be as if fire is coming from their hooves when they set down. And this is the statement of the vast majority. This is because these horses will be setting off in the night. And as their hooves are beating against the ground, it shall look like embers being thrown up with the dust. And these embers and pieces of dust being thrown up in the air is on account of the mujahideen marching out when the fires of war are kindled. It's mentioned by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. When the man goes out into war and he beats his horse to pick up speed, the horse's hooves kick against the rocks and kick up sparks, as said by Mujahid, Yazid ibn Aslam, and others. The same thing happens if horses or camels are on their way to Al-Muzdalifah, as said by Al-Qurdi. And when the horses are galloping and whinnying with great speed, as they're moving, their tongues are hanging out of their mouths, and they're moving forward. And as the truth is being expounded and falsehood is being expelled by these very circumstances, as is said by Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl. So these groups are marching out against the enemies at daylight, which is what the vast preponderance are saying. Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu said, these steeds that are marching out in the daylight hours. وَالْمُغِيرَاتِ صُبْحًا. And they leave traces in the valleys. They leave traces of their whereabouts, little though they may be, of the dust that was kicked up, the hoof prints that had been left behind as an evidence. And they gather about the enemy and repel them or march through and over them. Others bring caravans. As we mentioned in the beginning, shall happen at Muzdalifah. The human being is ungrateful to his Lord. Now this is the carry-on from the oaths that Allah took regarding the steeds going forward, the marching happening out, the things occurring at Al-Muzdalifah to Mina, and onward from there. And the human being that is ungrateful refers to the unbeliever. Ad-Dahhak has said, that ayah was sent down regarding Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira. Muqatil said this was sent down regarding Qurt ibn Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Nawfal from the Quraish. And Kanud refers to the one who eats alone and he doesn't share with the poor. He beats his servants. And this was narrated from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on behalf of Abu Umama. It's also the ungrateful one who is in general ungrateful, as said by Ibn Abbas, Mujahid, Qatada, Ad-Dahhak. The one who blames his Lord for the loss of his earnings and forgets the favors that Allah has given him, as said by Hasan al-Basri. Ibn Qutaybah has said, so this refers to the one who brings forward nothing. Sometimes it's said, Al-Ardul Kanud, the earth is Al-Kanud, meaning that that particular earth, you can't grow anything there. There's no good that can be taken. There are people that are like this as well. And he is a witness of this, meaning that he, Allah, is witness that he is like this. That Allah is witness of his kufr. And that the human being himself witnesses his own kufr. He bears witness against himself that he is ungrateful. And this is mentioned by Ibn Abbas and others. And that the human being has much love of wealth. He has a stern and strong love. Because of his love of wealth, he becomes stingy. This was mentioned by Al-Hasan al-Basri, Ibn Qutaybah, Az-Zajjaj, Abu Ubaidah, and others. His love of wealth, as mentioned by Al-Farra, is a destruction. Does he not know, does not the human being mention know that what is in the grave shall be overturned? And what's in the heart shall be brought out, extracted, and brought into plain view. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said, it means that whatever is inside shall be brought out. Ibn Qutaybah says, a distinction shall be made between good and evil. Abu Sulaiman al-Damashqi said, so if only the human being, the unbelieving human being, knew what was in that day, he would avoid rejecting faith and he would go immediately to Al-Islam. And this is why Allah says right after that, indeed, your Lord on that day shall be informed, is all informed of all of what they do. So if only the human being really understood this, he would not do these actions, rather he would hasten to Islam immediately. Now someone may say, is it not Allah informed of them in every circumstance? Why did Allah say, on that day he shall be fully informed of the matter? The answer to the question is that the reference being made, referred to, it means that he, Allah, shall inform them, because being khabir means being informed, but also rewarding someone based upon what you know. So he, Allah, already knows, but he shall reward them on that day for their actions. So there is no contradiction there. Remember what Allah said, أولئك الذين يعلم الله ما في قلوبهم. Those who Allah knows what's in their hearts. Surah An-Nisa, the 4th surah, ayah 63. Meaning He shall reward them for what's in their hearts. Remember the other statement Allah said, يَوْمَ هُمْ بَارِزُونَ لَا يَخْفَى عَلَى اللَّهِ مِنْهُمْ شَيْءٍ. They shall certainly be those rewarded. Nothing is hidden from Allah of that which they do. Surah Ghafir, the 40th surah, ayah 16. Close quote. Now there's just something in this surah that the Imam was getting at by quoting all these references. Namely that the steeds marching forward. If you've ever been on a farm or you've seen, if horses are galloping, if they've been shoed or not, when they gallop, if they're hitting sharp rocks or other things, sometimes the way their hooves hit those rocks, small sparks come out. And if it's in a battle or it's at night where horses are leaving out of an area, out of a manor, and you see the horses gallop up the lane very quickly, there's these little sparks that come because the hooves of the horse, that's dried protein and it's very hard. And often as they've been galloping and walking on it, it becomes sharpened to a point. And so when they gallop, it leaves up these sparks. Right? So the steeds marching out refers to just any steeds. Al-Adiyat, it's just any steeds. But the Imam specifically makes reference to the marching out at Al-Muzdalifah, Mina, and those places. And it's mentioned several of them. Why? Because this is a reference to the fact that the Hajj gathering shall be greater in number. So there'll be greater numbers to the point to where, because people were doing Hajj back then in what? On 1 or 2 camels if necessary, or horses, but mainly it's what? By foot. But if it says the steeds going forward, that means more than what's going on, which means the people coming to Hajj is going to increase in number. So the language being used is a futuristic language. And the hooves beating the ground, the sparks flying up in the daybreak, these are the steeds going forward to war of the Mujahideen that the Imam mentioned. The Mujahideen of where? Because if they're marching and going far away, then the sparks that are coming up are fights that are going to be happening in the cause of Allah. It can't be Badr because the Muslims didn't have enough horses to equal what's mentioned in this ayah. It can't be any of the normal battles that we saw, the 27, because they didn't have that many. It's mainly camels. Camels don't have hooves. They have toes. Now, the only thing we can think of are battles to come, which are when the Muslims left Arabia and exploded into North Africa and other places. That was a lot of horses. That was a lot of camels, where they marched on the Byzantine. They marched on the Persians. They marched on these people. So these are future events. And it's still discussed today. Unbelievers don't know how to come to terms with the fact that Muslims marched out in these numbers, not big numbers, and defeated the world's greatest powers in that time. They use excuses such as, well, the Romans and the Byzantines and the Persians were weakened from fighting each other, and so the 2 greatest armies in the world were defeated, even though they were 17-1 odds, 14-1 odds, 10-1 odds. There's no human way they can explain it, so they look for all these other ways. And this short surah gives us a piece of some of what was to come. Now the Imam says, quote, Surah Al-Qari'ah, this is a Meccan surah by consensus. As for the expression Al-Qari'ah, initially, we say that this expression was already mentioned in the beginning of Surah Al-Haqqa, the 69th surah. The Exalted One says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Al-Qari'ah, Mal-Qari'ah, wa ma adraka mal-Qari'ah. يوم يكون الناس كالفراش المبثوث وتكون الجبال كالعهن المنفوش فأما من ثقلت موازينه فهو في عيشة راضية وأما من خفت موازينه فأمه هاوية وما أدراك ما هي نار حامية. Allahu Akbar. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. The Great Clamor. What is the Great Clamor? What will cause you to know what is the Great Clamor? A day in which people shall be like moths, spread out. The mountains shall be stretched out and laid like carded wool. As far as the one whose scales are heavy, then he shall have a delightful life and an enjoyable life. As for the one whose scales are light, then his end is the Hawiyah. And what will cause you to know what is it? It is a piercing fire. Surah Al-Qari'ah, the 101st Surah, ayat 1 to 11. Now, when the Exalted One mentions the day in which man will be, meaning the day in which man shall be like moths spread out, meaning thrown all over the place, fluttering from place to place, as if they are small. They will be like birds running from place to place, looking for somewhere to land for safety where there is no safety. That's said by Abu Ubaidah. They shall be like butterflies or the mosquitoes cracked by fire who were seeking refuge, as said by Ibn Qutaybah. The same thing is said by Zajjaj. So the people at the time of the resurrection shall be like that, spread out, because they're going to and fro to one another in commotion. Al-Mawardi has said, this description is being given for the unbelievers because they will be going forward onto their judgment on the day of resurrection, to be burned into the fire, scattered about, just like butterflies being cracked by the fire or moths. The mountains shall be stretched out like carded wool. We've already described this in Surah Sa'ala Sa'il, ayah 9. Muqatil has said, so the mountains shall be like wool that is spread out, flattened and no more. So when someone sees the mountain, he will say, this was a mountain? And he won't see anything. That is from the severity of the hour. As far as the one whose scales were heavy, meaning heavy with righteous deeds, and we've already explained this in Surah Al-A'raf, the 7th Surah, ayah 8, and we've explained the meaning of a noble life in Surah Al-Haqqa, the 69th Surah, ayah 21. The home for the person whose scales are light is the Hawiyah. So he will be taken a hold of. Now the Hawiyah means that it will be flickering in the fire, and he'll be burned from his head to his feet. It's mentioned by Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl and Abu Salih. It's also mentioned that this is an Arabic word. So whenever a man used to fall into difficulties, they would say, Hawat ummuh. He's fallen into burning trouble. So this refers to deep trouble and trial. As said by Qatada, the fire shall take hold of such a one and grip him. Because ummuhu means in one definition that, But another definition, it goes back to the root, meaning the stillness that one finds when they go to their mothers. They don't move forward or back. They're still. So when one is in the fire, there is no escape from one place to the other. So the fire in this will become like their mother, in which there shall be no going front or back or to or fro. This is mentioned by Ibn Zayd al-Farra ibn Qutayba az-Zajjaj. And this statement is further elucidated from the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he said, when the slave dies and his soul meets the souls of the believers, he will say to him, what did so and so do? We mentioned he died. And if it is the unbeliever, they say, let him be taken to Ummuhu al-Hawiyah. And evil is that outcome for him. And he will be taken and thrown in that direction and not be given any way out. And what will cause you to know? What is it? Meaning, what is the Hawiyah? It is a blazing fire. And this is the reality of the matter. We then have Surah At-Takathur. Now this was revealed because the Jews used to say, we are more than the tribe of such and such. And the tribe of such and such is more than the other tribe. And this would carry on until when one of them died, he was forgotten about because of the fact that he may have been poor and buried without a built-up grave. So this was sent down regarding the matter, said by Qatada. It also refers to there were two groups from the Quraish, the Banu Abdul Manaf and the Banu Saham, who had between them other groups and tribes, and they said, we are more in lordship and strength. And others said, these are more in number than these. We are the very masters and honorable and noble ones. We have greater numbers, being the Banu Abdul Manaf. And they said, look at our dead, count them among you. Go visit their graves, look at their great numbers. And they looked at their dead and counted their numbers and mentioned how numerous they were, more than the Banu Saham, because they were more in number in the age of ignorance. And so this ayah was sent down regarding this matter, as said by Ibn as-Sa'ib as well as Muqatil. Close quote. Now, something needs to be considered. About 2 to 3 years ago, possibly, actually it was about 5 years ago, someone came to me and said, Brother Abu Ja'far, someone says that some of the hadith are unaccounted for. Some of them are lost. And I said, how could that be? And he said, could I show you this person? Fine. And as usual, it wasn't a book that was presented to me or a text. It was something on the computer. And this individual quoted a hadith from Abu Dawood's collection, in which the Prophet ﷺ said, I used to forbid you from visiting the graves, but now I tell you visit them, for they will remind you of death. The man then, secretly satisfied with himself and smiling smugly, said, well, this shows you right here that the hadith, because no one knows what that other hadith is, so it's clear that that hadith is lost. And this one here is the only one that remains of it. But mashallah, we accept all the hadith. And I thought to myself, what individual in his right mind would make such a pronouncement? As we know from the beginning of this tafsir of this surah, what would happen is when the wealthy of the unbelievers, whether they were from the Quraish or other tribes, died, they had great fanfare and they had better graves, more remembrance of their deceased than the Banu Saham, the weaker tribes and other weaker of the companions. If you go to your local Jewish graveyard today, there's one in this city, there's one in cities throughout. Look at their mausoleums. Look at their headstones. Look at the building that went into their graves. And the more famous the unbeliever, the more mighty their headstones. If you look at where George Washington, if there was a George Washington, and if his bones are indeed in there. If you look at his grave or the graves where the founding fathers of America are purported to be buried, if we believe the folklore, you will see monstrous mausoleums. Monstrous. And where Abraham Lincoln is purported to have lived. And all these different people there have these enormous mausoleums. So the weak and indigent among the Muslims felt bad for the fact that when their deceased died, or when their ancients died, or when their elders before them and predecessors died, they either had unnamed graves or very small graves. So this ayah, this surah, told them, don't go and visit those graves. Because when you see that, it's going to make you feel bad. So the hadith in Abu Dawood abrogated this statement here. So there's not a hadith that's lost. The individual in question did not know what he was referring to regarding tafsir and other literature. Because the prohibition on visiting is in this surah. And that prohibition being lifted is in the hadith in Abu Dawood. I used to forbid you from visiting the graves. Now I say to visit them. Why? Because now the Muslims had a greater understanding of it's irrelevant what the trappings of the graves are, what's there. And now the Muslims had a greater understanding of what martyrdom is and these other things, and they understood that where the believers are, that the believers aren't based just in the grave, that the soul, it goes on to greater things and belongs to Allah as His property and it's presented to Him. They understood a far deeper basis of this than they initially did. So when you hear that hadith, there's not a lost hadith or anything such as this. Rather, it's a misunderstanding of this whole principle. Now, the Imam goes on to say, quote, when looking at this surah, the exalted one, he begins with Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Alhaakumut takathur hatta zurtumul maqabir. Kalla sawfa ta'lamun. Thumma kalla sawfa ta'lamun. كلا لو تعلمون علم اليقين لترون الجحيم ثم لترونها عين اليقين ثم لتسألن يومئذ عن النعيم. Allahu Akbar. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. When you have stacked up great heaps of wealth, you continue doing so until the time that you shall visit the graves. Indeed, you shall come to know. Again, for a surety, you shall come to know. By no means, if you knew with knowledge of certainty that you were to see the great fire, then you would see it with the very eyes of certainty. And then you would be asked on that day regarding the favor that had been conveyed upon you. Surah At-Takathur, the 102nd surah, ayat 1 to 8. When the exalted one is mentioned, Al-Hakum, Al-Hakum, is a question, but also a statement that you have been made busy. You have busied yourselves. You have distracted yourselves. And what they've distracted themselves from is the obedience of Allah and His worship. And the takathur is the collecting together and gathering of abundant wealth as well as children, as said by Al-Hasan al-Basri. And boasting about the tribes and the clans, as said by Qatada. Busying oneself with their earthly trades and their mercantile pursuits, as said by Ad-Dahhak. That you're doing this until you visit the graves, meaning until death comes to you at that time, and you are present in the graves, and there are visitors. And until you are visitors to these graves, and you return from these graves to your homes. And your homes will either be in the end, the paradise, or the fire. Just as the visitor returns to his home from another location. Until you visit the graves, and you count within them those of your deceased. By no means, meaning the matter is not just as simple as you declare it to be. You shall come to know of the outcome of your stacking up wealth and boasting when death comes to you. At the time that death comes, you will know. At the time you're being put into your graves, you shall certainly know. If only you knew with knowledge that was certain, meaning if you knew with clear, certain knowledge that you'd been distracted because you'd been busy stacking up wealth and boasting. If you had known this, and that you were to see the great fire, and that you were to see it with the eyes of certainty, directly witnessing it, because the very essence of it, of something, is to see it, then you would be asked about the favor that had been given you. Now, this ayah is mentioned to be specific to the unbelievers who rejected the favors of Allah the Exalted, as said by Al-Hasan al-Basri. But it can also be general to anyone who is ungrateful, as mentioned by Al-Qatada. And the favor here meaning safety and good health, as discussed by Ibn Mas'ud and mentioned by the Prophet ﷺ. This was also discussed by Mujahid and Sha'abi. Access to clean water and cold water is said by, as narrated by Abu Hurairah from the Prophet ﷺ. Access to fresh bread and sweet fresh water, as said by Abu Umama. Someone having access to fresh food and drink is also one of the favors they'll be asked about, as mentioned by Jabir ibn Abdullah. Health in the body, having hearing and sight, as said by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. Qatada has also said that this is also referring to having a general good state of health, being able to take meals such as lunch and dinner, as said by Al-Hasan al-Basri, having health and free time, as said by Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl. Everything from the goodness of the dunya, as said by Mujahid. The favors of Allah upon His creation that don't even compare, even though they are mentioned, they do not compare to the sending of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, which is the ultimate favor given in the earthly life, as mentioned by Al-Qur'an. The various levels of favor, as said by Muqatil, are many. And the authentic understanding is every one of these counts as a favor for all the creation. The unbeliever is rebuked when asked, because he doesn't show any favor. And he never declared Allah's oneness and uniqueness. But the believer is asked about how grateful he was, and how strong he was in his gratefulness, and whether that distracted him from his worship to Allah in what he was amassing. Remember the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ in which he said, Allah shall say, in this hadith Qudsi, Allah shall say, there are three that I shall not ask my slave regarding their thankfulness. I shall ask him regarding other than that. It is a house that shelters him, number two, the food that keeps his back straight when he eats it, and number three, the clothing that he covers his nakedness with. That he was bestowed. These thankful slaves I shall not ask them. This is collected by Abdullah ibn Ahmed. We then have Surah Al-Asr. This surah is said to be Meccan, as mentioned by Ibn Abbas and Abdullah ibn Zubayr, and the vast majority. While the small group say it is from Al-Madinah. This was mentioned by Mujahid, Qatada, and Muqatil. The Exalted One, he says therein, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Wal Asr, Innal Insana Lafi Khusr, إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Allahu Akbar. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. By the time human being is in a state of loss, except those who believe and do righteous deeds, and they enjoin one another with the truth, and enjoin one another with patience. Surah Al-Asr, the 103rd surah, ayat 1 to 3. Now the expression Wal-Asr refers to the time, as said by Ibn Abbas, Zayd ibn Aslam, Al-Farra, Ibn Qutaybah. And here Allah swears by time because it is an expression for the onlooker who sees the passage of night and day to think about the blessing that he has so that he doesn't miss it. It refers to the evening time, what is between the time between the zenith of the sun and the sunset. This was discussed by Al-Hasan al-Basri and Qatada. And it also refers, as said by Muqatil, to Salat al-Asr itself. Every human being in loss, after Allah has made the oath by Al-Asr, the human being here means mankind. So the human being, although the word human being is in the singular, it intends the plural. Because the same thing in Arabic we say, كَثْرَ الدِّرْهَمْ فِي أَيْدِ النَّاسِ. The dirham is in the hands of the people. meaning that all the dirhams are in the hands of the people, but you use the singular for emphasis. And the khusr, whether you say khusr or khusran, the meaning is the same. Khusr is the destruction of the head of wealth or its decrease. So the human being that does not use himself in what has been made compulsory for him so that he secures the true victory in the hereafter, he's lost everything, as if he's lost all of his wealth. Because his actions in this life are like wealth. And he's destroyed himself because he's cut off the majority of his wealth because he's not done what he was created to do. Except those who believe. They believe in certainty, in Allah and His Messenger, and they act by righteousness. They enjoin one another in truth, meaning of Tawheed, the Quran, and following the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they enjoin one another with patience in obeying Allah, standing by His revealed law. And Ibrahim al-Nakha'i said in commentary of this surah, indeed the human being, when he's given his years in this earthly life, if he meets decrease and weakness, he falls apart except for those who believe. Because they've had written down for them the reward of their deeds, which they act by in their youth, in their health, and in sickness and in weakness. We then come to Surah Al-Humazah. Hibatullah, the great scholar of commentary, he says the following about this surah. Close quote. Now, we want to talk a brief short second about him. His name is, this great scholar, he's one of the earliest, after the companions, the first three generations, he's one of the earliest commentators on Quran. Very vigorous. He was very focused. And what he did is he took the science of tafsir, because you have to remember, all the sciences were together. And they were originally one thing, or four things, or three things. He took the science of tafsir, and then he broke it down into smaller constituent pieces. He wrote 3 books on different topics within tafsir. His name is Hibatullah Ibn Salama Ibn Nasr. He was the blind sheikh. He died 410 Hijri. He was from Baghdad. And he had a huge halaqah gathering of thousands. So every week, 10,000 or more people would sit in his dars. Right? So if you think about how many people may go to like a football game, a really big football, maybe the finals or something like this, that's how many people sat in his dars every week. That number of however many went there. Blind from a very young age. His specialty, though, was tafsir. Brilliant scholar in tafsir. So his name, Hibatullah, it often comes up when scholars talk about tafsir. Even if he's not used, he's at least consulted. Major figure. Major figure. So, Imam Al-Jawzi rahimahullah, he says, quote, Imam Hibatullah, the commentator, says about this surah, which is a Meccan surah by consensus. Someone said that this is a Medinan surah. But this is not the case. Now, the scholars of commentary differ on whether this was sent down regarding a specific person or was it sent down in just a general sense about anyone who fits this description. The first position is that it was sent down regarding a specific individual. And this position is upheld by Ibn Abbas As-Sudai and Ibn As-Sa'ib, who said that it refers to Al-Akhnas ibn Shuraiq. However, Urwa ibn al-Zubayr said that it refers to Al-As ibn Wa'il al-Sahmi. Another group, which was from Jurayj and Muqatil, said that it refers to Jamil ibn Amir. But this was said by Ibn Nujayh. A fourth group say it refers to Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira. While the fifth group say it refers to Umayyah ibn Khalaf, which was discussed by Ibn Ishaq and others. Still another group and a final group says it refers to Ubay ibn Khalaf, said by Al-Mawardi. But the second position is that it's general for anyone who fits this description. This was mentioned by Mujahid. And the Exalted One, he says, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Waylun likulli humazatin lumazah. الذي جمع مالا وعدده يحسب أن ماله أخلده كلا لينبذن في الحطمة وما أدراك ما الحطمة نار الله الموقدة التي تطلع على الأفئدة إنها عليهم موصدة في عمد ممددة Allahu Akbar. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. Woe be to every backbiting slanderer who gathers together wealth and counts it, and reckons that his wealth shall keep him alive forever. By no means. He shall come to know of Al-Hutama. And what will cause you to know what is Al-Hutama? It is the fire of Allah that has been kindled, which rises up and reaches the hearts and innermost. It shall be a blazing countenance against them and have pillars and waves in rows. Surah Al-Humazah, the 104th Surah, ayat 1 to 9. Now the Exalted One, when he mentions woe be to every backbiting slanderer Humazah and Lumazah, are these two words have bearing the same meaning or different meanings? Some say they bear different meanings. That the expression Humazah is backbiting, but Lumazah is a fault finder. That's said by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. Humazah is also said to be the one who slanders people to their face. But Lumazah is the one who slinks around from place to place, slandering them in their absence. This was mentioned by Al-Hasan al-Basri, Ata, and Abu al-Aliyah. Al-Humazah is also said to refer to the fault finder and disputer among people, whilst Lumazah is the one who calls people out of their names and tries to cast doubts on their lineage and who their parents are, as said by Mujahid. It's also said that Humazah is the one who tries to put al-ayn, the eye, upon people, while Lumazah is the one who sets his tongue against people, as said by Qatada. Humazah is said to be the one who puts harm to people with his hands and strikes them, but the Lumazah is the one who harms people with his tongue, as said by Ibn Zayd. Also, it's said that Humazah is the one who slanders people with his tongue, and Lumazah is the one who slanders with his eye. This was mentioned by Sufyan al-Thawri. And then finally, Humazah is said to be the backbiter, and the Lumazah is the one who slanders to the face or slanders from other locations in the hope that it reaches that person, as said by Muqatil. Now, the Humazah is the fault finder and blamer, but the Lumazah is similar to it, because the root of Humazah and Lumazah are very close. Whereas the Humazah is the Lumazah, Al-Humazatul Lumazah is the one who both backbites people and also causes them to hate one another with purposeful intent. He gathers the wealth together and counts it. So he looks at the wealth, reckons it, suffices himself with it, and keeps track of it over the years, looking at it time and time again. This was mentioned by Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl and Az-Zajjaj. He reckons that his wealth shall be forever, meaning that it shall always accompany him. It shall protect him from death. He does with it what he wills, and he doesn't think he will die. But no, his wealth is not permanent, and it will not give him any long standing. He shall come to know of the Hutama. The Hutama is one of the names of the great fire. So Jahannam is the place, but Al-Hutama is one of its names. Now it's named this because it breaks up and devours whatever is thrown into it. Hutama literally means that which eats flesh. So that which rises up and reaches the very innermost to man's hearts means it rises up and it devours the flesh and distorts the complexion until it scorches the very skin down to the bone. So it reaches the highest levels of the individual. And it will look, when someone looks upon them, as if they are dead. But these individuals are not dead. They have just been scorched. They are seared And this word mu'sada is discussed in Surah Al-Balad, ayah 20. And the fire rushing and coming up like waves. Fi amadin mumaddada, coming up like waves, like pillars, large. They shall be punished like that in the fire. And there shall be long pillars or waves of the fire blazing down upon them. Now, we go to Surah Al-Fil. This is a Meccan surah by consensus. The Exalted One, he says, Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بأصحاب الفيل ألم يجعل كيدهم في تضليل وأرسل عليهم طيرا أبابيل ترميهم بحجارة من سجيل فجعلهم كعصف مأكول. Allahu Akbar. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. Have you not seen how your Lord dealt with the companions of the elephant? Did he not bring their plans to ruin? He sent against them birds in abundance, carrying baked clay pebbles. They threw down against them these baked clay pebbles and made them to look like upturned stalks of wheat that had been eaten, leaving nothing in their wake. Surah Al-Fil, the 105th surah, ayat 1 to 5. When the Exalted One says, have you not seen? Meaning, have you not been informed of? Do you not know? Have you not come to pass? The people of the companions of the elephant are those who sought to destroy the Kaaba. The reason of them trying to do this is that Abraha had sought to build a cathedral, and he wanted to use this cathedral to turn the Arabs away from the Hajj in Mecca. A man from the Bani Kanana heard of this, and he went out seeking this area. When he found the place where the cathedral was being constructed, he soiled the cathedral by relieving himself. When news of this reached Abraha, he swore that he would make his way to the Kaaba and destroy it. This truncated discussion was mentioned by Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu. But there was also an incident preceding this where there were a people from the Quraish that went to trade in the land of Abyssinia. They came down into the south and they saw a cathedral near there, and they kindled a fire and cooked meat. But the smell from the fire that they had made wafted on and came into the location. And the smell annoyed people, and also the blackness of the smoke damaged some of the walls of the cathedral. This annoyed Najashi and would later become part of the reason of his going to try to destroy the Kaaba. The very elders of his group, among them Hijr ibn Sharahil, who was from Aqsam, he said, do not worry, we will destroy the Kaaba. That's said by Muqatil. Ibn Ishaq also said, Abu Yaksum is also one of the titles of Abraha ibn al-Ashram. Scholars of commentary mention that when Abraha al-Ashram went with his army to make their way to the Kaaba to destroy it, he marched out with an elephant. When he came near to the Kaaba, he ordered his companions to move forward in order to destroy it. But they came upon some of the camels of Abdul Muttalib. He sent part of his armies, and they said, ask the noblemen of Mecca to come out. We don't intend to come to fight. We've only come to destroy this house. Let them go out until Mecca is entered and left to nothing. Abdul Muttalib ibn Hashim met, and he said, indeed, the king has sent me to come to you as a messenger to inform you that he's not coming to fight unless you decide to fight him. He's only come to destroy this house. Then he's going to leave. Abdul Muttalib then said, we desire no fighting from him. We have no strength to defend against him. We have no anger that's come between ourselves and him. This is the house of Allah that is sacred and holy, and the house of his most beloved, Ibrahim alayhi salam. If he prevents him from the house, then it's his house and his sanctuary. And if he opens the path for him between him and the house, then by Allah, it's not for us to have any power in the matter. So he said, the man went out with me to the king. When Abdul Muttalib entered on Abraha, he respected him and ennobled him. Then he said to his translator, tell him, what need do you have of the king? He said to the translator, my need is that you need to return to me the 200 camels that were taken. Abraha said to the translator, tell him, you astonish me. Here I am seeking to destroy this area, and you've come to me, asking me to return camels to you, 200 in number, when I've come to destroy the very apex of your religion. And you come speaking to ask me about camels. Abdul Muttalib turned to the translator and said, tell him that I am the master over these camels. And this house has a master. So this master shall take care of the house. But I've been ordered to take care of these camels. So are you returning them or aren't you? I've been given clear advice regarding the Quraish. So he went out and he informed the Quraish. He told them to go into the hillocks and on the tops of mountains out of fear of what may happen when the army enters in. And they did so. Abdul Muttalib came to the Kaaba and he took it by the circle of its door. And he said, Lord, I don't hope for them any way over you. And Lord, hamper from them that which they might do. For indeed, an enemy coming to the house has no right. Prevent them, lest they come in and bear any harm. Then Abraha, when the morning came, he decided to go through. And he told his elephants and gave them the command to march forward. But the chief elephant abstained. They struck the elephant and it abstained. They made it face towards the area to march, but it wouldn't. When they turned it towards Yemen in the south to march back, it would acquiesce and get up to make haste. But when they turned it towards Sham, it would turn to make haste. When they turned it towards the east, it would turn to make haste. But when they turned it towards the sanctuary, it refused. Allah then sent birds with baked clay. Now the discussion over these birds and how much clay they had and how much they had in their areas were discussed and differed in by some of the scholars. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu said that the trunks of these elephants were like the trunks of the birds that came as well. And the birds came holding the baked clay in their beaks and in their feet. This was mentioned by Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl and Sa'id ibn Jubayr. Ikrimah and Sa'id ibn Jubayr said these birds had a almost green appearance, they were so dark. Whereas Ubayd ibn Umayr said no, they were black. Others said they were a dusky white color, as said by Qatada. And that each bird had 3 pebbles, 2, 1 in each foot, and 1 in his beak. Now these stones or pebbles were to be of baked clay, And these stones, when they came down, they decimated the army. So they were destroyed and no one entered the sanctuary. And Allah the Exalted sent against Abraha a disease in his body that left him immobilized and ate the flesh off of him. And he wound up splitting into 2 pieces when his body eroded and fell apart. The people of Mecca saw the birds and knew that something was afoot. Abdul Muttalib said, "These birds are strange indeed, they are not from this area." Abdul Muttalib sent his son Abdullah on a horse to look at the people and find out what was going on. He returned and came back and said, "The army was destroyed in totality." Abdul Muttalib came out, he and his companions, and they gathered their wealth. And they said, "Well, no one was saved from this army except Yaksum, but he eventually was destroyed on the journey back. And nothing remained of that army that tried to attack them, but they were destroyed." Now, the question is, how many years before the birth of the Prophet ﷺ did this happen? Some say that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ was born in the same year as the incident of the elephant. So he was supposed to be born in the year of the elephant. And this is the most authentic and correct position. The second is that there were 23 years between these incidents, as said by Ibn Abbas, and Muqatil said there was 40 years between these incidents. And did He, Allah, not make their plans come to nothing, meaning their attempt to destroy the Kaaba? And He sent against them birds in great abundance, the baked clay. This was mentioned by Tawus, Muqatil, Ata, Abu Salih, Abu Ubaidah, Ibn Qutayba, and Az-Zajjaj, as well as Zayd ibn Aslam and others. They threw against them the pebbles. The Sijil, these pebbles, is mentioned again in Surah Hud, the 10th Surah, ayah 82. Asif is also mentioned in Surah Al-Rahman, the 55th Surah, ayah 12. And they were left as if like chewed up wheat, in which nothing remained of them, as if they'd been chewed up wheat consumed and bitten at by wild beasts. Nothing remained of them, and nothing was to remain of them. We then come to Surah Quraish. Surah Quraish is also known as Surah Al-Ilaf. The vast majority say this is a Meccan surah, while another body say that it is a Medinan surah. This was mentioned by Ad-Dahhak ibn As-Sa'ib. And Allah the Exalted has said, Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim, Li-ilafi Quraish, إيلافهم رحلة الشتاء والصيف فليعبدوا رب هذا البيت الذي أطعمهم من جوع وآمنهم من خوف. Allahu Akbar. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate. The Quraish and the Quraish have traveled forth in the journey in the winter and in the summer. So let them worship the Lord of this house, who fed them during times of hunger and protected them and gave them safety at times of fear. Surah Quraish, the 106th Surah, ayat 1 to 4. So Al-Ilaf, the scholars that discuss this surah and its placement and its recital and its lettering has been discussed by the scholars of grammar And there is a wisdom in this surah because He, Allah, devastated the companions of the elephant and allowed the Quraysh to remain so that they might travel in the winter and the summer. And this is the understanding of the vast majority, that this surah reveals and leaves the prophetic dispensation of the Quraysh remaining. Close quote. Now what this refers to is the fact that if the Kaaba was devastated and this area was devastated, if the Quraysh tribe had been dispelled, the Quraysh had been living there for close to 1,000 years. The prophecies about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if that had happened, he would not have been born in Mecca, because Mecca would have been left as nothing. He would have not been born among the Quraysh, because they would have been dispersed and spread about. Many of the other prophetic dispensations that happened. So this Surah Al-Fil, we already know that's prophetic. But so is Surah Quraysh, because there's a Quraysh tribe today because of the Prophet ﷺ coming among them and everything else that happened. If the events in Surah Al-Fil had not happened, then Surah Quraysh could not have happened, where they continued to travel in the winter and the summer and coming back and forth. So many things had to be in place in order for him to be born at the time that he was born, where he was born, among the people he was born. If this had not happened, then none of what we know could have come to pass. So the Quraysh needed to be there. The Kaaba needed to be there. The Quraysh, we see them today. They're the most light-skinned out of all the Arabs. Right? They're still there today. And there's a divine wisdom in that. Right? Now, the Imam, rahimahullah, he says, quote, and so this is the wisdom in this regard. So let them be astonished that the Quraysh remain traveling in the winter and the summer. And let them go to the worship of the Lord of this house. That's what Allah is saying. Let them worship the Lord of this house, who protected them and who gave them the ability to travel in the winter and the summer, because He, Allah, made them safe in those times. He gave them hunger. He gave them food at times of hunger. And when they said, "We are the people of the sanctuary of Allah," He, Allah, continued to give them that right. Now it needs to be understood that this surah and Surah Fil are one in terms of the subject matter and their relation to one another. And most of the people hold that these are two separate surahs, but the data is connected. The information is one, and that they follow along directly from one another. So the Quraysh, they were safe in the Haram from their enemies. The Haram is a valley in which no vegetation or trees grow therein for habitation for the people or consumption over long term. And the Quraysh live there with their trade. And they have 2 journeys in every year, one in the winter and one in the summer to Sham. If it was not for these, they could not establish a place there. If it was not for the sacred house being there, they would not be able to carry out their duties. When the companions of the elephant came to destroy the Kaaba, Allah destroyed them in order that the Quraysh might be established at the Haram. And Allah mentioned His favor in these 2 surahs to this people. So He, Allah, is mentioning that He destroyed these so that the Quraysh might remain, so they could continue to do these journeys and to live and to maintain their place at Mecca. So Allah maintained them so that the plan might be maintained. The Quraysh. As for the Quraysh are the son of An-Nadr ibn Kinana. And whoever is not from the lineage of An-Nadr ibn Kinana, he is not from Quraysh. Fihr ibn Malik was the first one to bear the title Quraysh. They're called Quraish because of the fact that they gather the wealth together, spend it, but Qursh is also a baby shark. Quraish is the baby shark. Qirsh is also earning in wealth. Once Muawiyah asked Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh, for what reason was the Quraysh named Quraysh? Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh said, because there's a beast which is in the water that's referred to as a Quraysh. And it was a baby shark. And whenever the man that bore this namesake passed it by, he would always fish and catch one of them and use the fat and the meat for it. So because of this, he was named Quraysh. And he spoke the poetry saying, and Quraysh, it is that one that lives in the sea. Name Quraysh, that is the title for you and me. Al-Ambari has said, thus the Quraysh are named as they are, the people of the baby shark and the earning. Thus, when Allah the Exalted, He says that they remain, the Quraysh remain, traveling, and that their journeys were for trade because they were in a mercantile type of business. They would go to Sham in the summer and to Yemen in the winter on account of the fact that they did not enjoy the severe cold of Sham. It's related by Sa'id ibn Jubayr from Ibn Abbas that they said in the winter they traveled at Mecca, and in the summer they sometimes went to Ta'if. Al-Farra said that the rihla that they did was a journey for mercantile business and trade. Let them worship the Lord of this house, meaning let them declare Him one and unique, the one who fed them at times of hunger. He gave them clothing at times of nakedness, because Allah the Exalted gave them safety in the haram, and He did not abandon them on their journeys. It was a cause for their being able to earn money to feed themselves after they had been hungry. It's also narrated from Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh that they suffered harm and hunger and difficulty, but Allah gathered them together. And the first one to begin this yearly travel twice in a year was Hashim. And they followed along in his pathway after that. And they often wandered between wealth and penury until some of them became very wealthy. And He gave them safety after they were afraid. So He gave them safety at the Haram sanctuary. They maintained their presence there. And when they traveled, these people of the Haram had fear, but they were protected. Close quote. So just something very quick then about the Quraysh. The Quraysh are a small clan, but they're a well-known clan. They're part of a bigger clan. Because you have shu'ub, which are clans, then you have qaba'il, which are tribes. The Arabs go back to the 12 sons of Nabiyuna Ismail alayhi salam. They go back to them. Those 12 sons then spread to different locations within Arabia. And those 12 sons then come down the ages to our times now. Now there are 7 major figures that all the Arabs go back to that then go back to the 12. Whoever is not from them is not from the Arabs. So when we're talking about someone being from the Arabs in a racial sense, it's that everyone today that is an Arab goes back to these 7 major figures, and then those 7 major figures then branch back into the 12 somehow. There are plenty of people that are Arabic speakers. Berbers, they're not Arabs, but they speak Arabic. We're talking about actual Arabs. So the Quraysh became known because during this time, what were the Arabs before the Quraysh began this trading? Archers, horsemen, camelmen. And there's no shame in that, to be a cameleer or a horseman or any of those things. But the Quraysh began a lot of mercantile business, traveling, bringing back spices, particularly frankincense and myrrh. Why? Why would you bring back kundur and murra to burn in the temple? Because the people that had initially turned the Kaaba into something idolatrous would burn these huge incense sticks as an offering to the gods. You burnt the incense sticks. Why would you burn incense sticks? It's not just because they smelled good, but incense sticks acted as a disinfectant. Why? Well, because when you offered sacrifices on huge stone altars, the smell of blood and the bacteria for blood and everything else could make you sick. So you burnt frankincense. You'll often notice people will tell you, especially if they're into what they call homeopathic medicine or these other fancy titles they use for it. The point is they know how the body works and how the real world is. When you say, oh, I've had this chesty cough or everyone in the house has fallen ill or whatever else. Do you have any frankincense and myrrh incense? Well, no. You need to get some authentic frankincense and burn it. Why? Because it will clear out a lot of these things. If you find that people in your house constantly fall sick, they're always ill all the time. Why are they ill? Because there's these germs, there's these bacteria. Frankincense and myrrh helps flush all of that out. Then you're bringing back silk, you're bringing back spices, you're bringing back things like ginger, zinjibil. You have your zinjibil, you have your paprika, you have your tamar hind, you have your teen, your zaytun, all these different things that are being brought back that now form a little bit of a mercantile business. Because that's what kept Mecca. Mecca was kind of like this foot into sort of this in-between stopover from people using the Silk Road and then people going into Africa. And the Quraish, in their intelligence, thought there's really something good we can take advantage of here. But we need something to trade in order to get something in return. So they didn't go to Sham in the winter, because Sham is cold like England in the winter. It's cold like England. So they thought, okay, we're not going to go there in the winter. We'll go down south to Yemen. Then in the summer, we'll go to Sham and buy what they have. So they're going to have different foods, different spices, because it's different peoples. Right? In Sham, they're Arabs, but they've developed their own distinct culture. In Yemen, they're Arabs, but these are Qahtani Arabs. So they've developed sort of their own cultural Qahtani thing that they're doing down there. And that's what they've decided to do. So the Quraysh had this unique opportunity, but they ultimately wound up falling into penury because of Abdul Muttalib. When he excavated the well of Zemzem, which had been covered over for many years, he said that he was so joyous he will sacrifice the first thing that comes in out of joy, and it was his son that walked in, his favorite son. And he didn't want to sacrifice his favorite son because human sacrifice was not unknown to the Arabs. But he didn't want to sacrifice his favorite son. He didn't want to do that. So he said, I'll sacrifice a camel in its place. So he went and did some divination and drew the name out, but it was still the name of his son. And that kept happening until 100 camels. So he destroyed all of his wealth, which wound up being slaughtered. And a massive banquet was happening, the banquet of 100 camels, which left the particular branch of Quraysh, Bani Hashim, was completely bankrupt and poor. And it's that circumstance that the Prophet ﷺ was born into. So we're really fortunate that we've reached this area because there's some huge stuff going on here. And I'll stop here. We have 2 pages left in the Mus'haf and some surahs left. So I say, أقول قولي هذا استغفر الله لي ولكم أستغفر الله إن الله غفور رحيم يرحم الراحمين ولا إله إلا الله. Is there any question over what we've covered so far today? Yes.
You mentioned in the commentary of Surah Fi, the Sheikh said that the trunks of the elephant are like the birds. What does that mean?
Okay. So when the Imam said that the question was that the trunks of the elephants, the Imam mentions in the Tafsir of Surah Fil that they were like the beaks of birds. What did the Imam mean by that? That refers to the fact that they were long like the beasts of birds, and they were sticking up. So normally, if you look at elephants, especially African elephants, when they're marching into battle, their trunks are upright and they're pointed, right? Because they're marching on, because they use their trunks as weapons as well. So they were upstanding to go forward, but they wouldn't go any further. So when you turn them towards Sham, they go up, they're ready to march. You turn them towards Mecca, they won't go any further. Right? Question? Other questions? No? Okay. So we'll stop here. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك وأشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك إنه غفور رحيم يرحم الراحمين ولا إله إلا الله والسلام عليكم.